I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by the remnants of what was once my pride and joy, a handcrafted wooden sailboat model that had taken me 3 years to complete. The delicate masts were snapped, the tiny hand-stitched sails torn to shreds, and the meticulously painted hull cracked beyond repair. My daughter-in-law Vanessa's words still rang in my ears, sharp and deliberate like the sound of breaking glass. "Honestly, Richard, these little hobbies of yours are worthless, just like your so-called advice and wisdom. Maybe it's time you found something useful to do with the few years you have left." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I hadn't responded. I simply gathered the broken pieces of my model, placed them carefully in a cardboard box, and walked out of my son Michael's house without a word. That was 3 months ago. Since then, the phone had rung exactly twice, both times Michael asking for money to cover unexpected expenses without so much as mentioning the incident. At 68, I'd spent 42 years working as a civil engineer, building bridges that connected communities. I'd raised 2 children as a widower after my wife Sarah passed when they were just teenagers. I'd put both kids through college, helped with down payments on their first homes, and been there for every crisis, large or small. I never asked for recognition, just respect. But somewhere along the way, I'd become an ATM with a pulse. A convenient resource when bills piled up or childcare fell through. The wisdom that had guided a 30-year career designing structures that thousands trusted with their lives daily was now considered outdated and out of touch. My experience, dismissed as irrelevant. My boundaries, non-existent. I finished my morning coffee and stared at the calendar hanging on my kitchen wall. The red circle around today's date seemed to pulsate with a warning. Sunday dinner at Michael and Vanessa's. The monthly ritual I'd come to dread, where I'd sit silently while Vanessa criticized everything from my clothes to my retirement plans while Michael studied his plate with sudden fascination. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael, "Don't forget dinner tonight. Vanessa's making her lasagna. The kids have been asking for you." The kids. My grandchildren, Emma and Jacob, ages 8 and 5. The only reason I still subjected myself to these dinners. Their genuine excitement when I arrived, the way they'd run to the door shouting "Grandpa," before I could even ring the bell, it was the one pure thing left in this relationship. But lately, even that joy had been tainted. Vanessa had started making comments about me spoiling them, suggesting I was undermining their parenting with simple gestures like bringing small gifts or taking them for ice cream. I texted back a simple "I'll be there" and set the phone down. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one I kept locked, and pulled out a leather portfolio. Inside were bank statements, property deeds, investment accounts, and a will that hadn't been updated in 5 years. After Sarah died, I'd focused entirely on providing security for my children. I'd lived frugally, invested wisely, and built a nest egg that had grown more substantial than most people realized. Michael and Vanessa certainly had no idea. They assumed I lived on a modest pension and Social Security. They didn't know about the rental properties, the stock portfolio, or the patents I held from my engineering innovations. I spread the documents across my desk and began making notes. After 3 months of careful consideration, I'd made my decision. I would not be a doormat any longer. I would not be the silent ATM, the convenient babysitter, the punching bag for Vanessa's insecurities. It was time to reclaim my dignity. I picked up the phone and made 3 calls, one to my attorney, one to my financial advisor, and one to my daughter Catherine, who lived across the country in Oregon. Unlike Michael, Catherine called weekly just to chat. She never asked for money, even when I knew she struggled as a single mother teaching high school science. She sent me handmade cards from my granddaughter Lily and always asked about my projects with genuine interest. By the time I finished my calls, it was nearly 4 o'clock. I showered, dressed in my best casual clothes, crisp khakis and a blue button-down that Sarah had always said matched my eyes, and grabbed the small gift bags I'd prepared for Emma and Jacob. Nothing extravagant, just books I thought they'd enjoy. Then I picked up a larger envelope from my desk and headed to my car. The drive to Michael's suburban home took exactly 22 minutes. I knew because I'd timed it dozens of times, always ensuring I arrived precisely on schedule, never early enough to inconvenience, never late enough to be criticized. Their house was impressive: 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a manicured lawn, and a 3-car garage. A house I'd helped make possible with a $50,000 loan for the down payment that was never mentioned again after the check cleared. I parked in the street rather than the driveway, another unspoken rule of Vanessa's. As expected, the front door burst open before I reached it, and Emma and Jacob tumbled out, faces bright with excitement. "Grandpa! We made you pictures." Emma thrust a crayon drawing into my hands. "I built a rocket." Jacob held up a Lego creation. I knelt down, my knees protesting, and hugged them both. "These are wonderful. I have something for you too, but let's go inside first." Michael appeared in the doorway, a tight smile on his face. "Hey, Dad." "Right on time as usual." I nodded and followed the children inside, where the smell of tomato sauce and cheese filled the air. Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Richard. Glad you could make it." Her gaze dropped to the gift bags in my hand, and her lips thinned. "More presents?" "We just talked about not spoiling them." "Just books," I said quietly, handing them to the children, who tore into them with delight. "Dinosaur encyclopedia." Jacob shouted. "Women scientists throughout history," Emma read carefully. "With pictures." "Educational at least," Vanessa conceded, turning back toward the kitchen. "Dinner's in 10 minutes. Michael, set the table." I sat with the children in the living room, looking through their new books while Michael arranged plates and silverware in the dining room. This was the pattern: Vanessa cooking and directing, Michael complying, me relegated to child entertainment until summoned to the table. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dinner began as it always did, with Vanessa detailing the children's recent accomplishments, Michael's work challenges, and her own volunteer activities at the children's school. I nodded and made appropriate sounds of interest while cutting my lasagna into perfectly even squares, a habit from my engineering days that Vanessa had mocked more than once. "So, Dad," Michael said during a lull, "how's the apartment? Any issues with that plumbing problem?" "Fixed now," I replied, not mentioning that I'd handled it myself rather than calling the property manager. A lifetime of solving problems doesn't disappear with retirement. "I saw Mrs. Abernathy at the grocery store," Vanessa interjected. "She said she's worried about you living alone. Said you seem isolated." I took a sip of water. "Mrs. Abernathy should worry about her own affairs. I'm perfectly fine." "Well, we worry too, Dad," Michael said, not meeting my eyes. "You know, we've been thinking that back bedroom would make a nice setup for you. The kids would love having you around more." I set down my fork. This was new. I looked between them, noting how Vanessa studied her wine glass, how Michael's right eye twitched slightly, his tell since childhood when he wasn't being entirely truthful. "That's thoughtful," I said carefully, "but I'm comfortable in my apartment." "It's just that it makes sense financially," Vanessa added quickly. "You wouldn't have rent to pay, and we could use a little help with the mortgage and the kids' private school tuition. Things are tight with the economy the way it is." Ah. There it was. Not concerned for my welfare, but for my wallet. "Plus," Michael added, "you could help with the kids after school. Vanessa's taken on more responsibilities with her charity work, and after-school care is so expensive." I nodded slowly, taking another bite of lasagna to give myself time to respond calmly. "I appreciate the offer, but I value my independence. And my apartment is paid through the year." Vanessa's expression hardened. "Richard, I don't think you understand. Michael's been passed over for promotion twice now. Emma's dyslexia tutor costs a fortune. The roof needs replacing. We're not asking for charity, we're offering you a chance to help your family when we need it. Isn't that what you always preached about?" Family first? I set my napkin down beside my plate. Yes, family first. Which is why I've helped with college tuition, down payments, car loans, and countless other expenses over the years. But family first doesn't mean Richard's needs last. The table fell silent. Even the children sensed the tension, their eyes darting between the adults. Maybe the kids should go play in the backyard for a bit, I suggested gently. Michael nodded. Good idea. Emma, take your brother outside for a while. Once they were gone, I reached for the envelope I'd brought and placed it on the table. I've been doing some thinking these past few months, especially since our last disagreement. If this is about that stupid boat model, I've already apologized, Vanessa snapped. It was an accident. No, you haven't apologized, I corrected quietly. And it wasn't an accident when you knocked it to the floor and then stepped on it while telling me how worthless my hobbies are, just like my advice and wisdom, I believe you said. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Dad, Vanessa was just having a bad day. We all say things we don't mean. Do we? I asked, looking directly at him. Or do we say exactly what we mean in moments of frustration, and then pretend otherwise when it's convenient? I opened the envelope and removed several documents. I've been enabling a situation that's unhealthy for all of us. I've allowed myself to become a resource rather than a person. That changes today. What is this? Michael asked, reaching for the papers. A complete accounting of every loan, gift, and financial contribution I've made to your household over the past decade. It totals just over $217,000, not including the childcare I've provided or the maintenance work I've done on this house. Vanessa's face flushed. Are you saying you want us to pay you back? After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Vanessa? I asked, my voice still calm but firm. Please, enlighten me. We've included you in our lives. We've had you over every month, invited you to the children's events. The bare minimum of family obligation is not a gift, I interrupted. And no, I don't expect repayment. These aren't loans anymore, they're gifts. But I'm done. The financial support ends today. Michael's face paled. Dad, you can't be serious. We're counting on your help with the kids' tuition next semester. You'll need to find another solution, I said. I'm not cutting ties with you or the children. I'll still attend events, still have appropriate relationships with my grandchildren. But the bank of Dad is permanently closed. This is about that stupid boat, isn't it? Vanessa's voice rose. You're punishing us over a toy. No, I said, standing up. This is about respect. About recognizing that I'm a person with feelings, boundaries, and dignity. Not an ATM, not a convenient babysitter, and certainly not someone to be insulted in my own family. I placed a second document on the table. I've also revised my will and established trusts for all 3 of my grandchildren. They'll receive their inheritances at age 25, provided they complete college or vocational training. The trustees are independent, neither of you will have access to those funds. Michael stood now too, his face reddening. You can't do this to us. We're your family. Yes, you are. Which is why I'm doing this now, while I'm alive and can repair our relationship if you're willing to treat me with respect. I'd rather have genuine connection than continue this transaction we've been calling family. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. So that's it? You're cutting us off unless we bow and scrape to your ego? I picked up my keys from the table. I'm setting a boundary. How you respond to it will determine what our relationship looks like going forward. I love you both, and I adore my grandchildren. But I will not be treated as a resource rather than a person any longer. I walked to the back door and called the children in to say goodbye. I hugged them both tightly, promising to see them soon for our regular museum trip. Then I walked out the front door without looking back, even as I heard Michael calling after me. The drive home felt longer than 22 minutes. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, adrenaline coursing through my system. I'd rehearsed this conversation for weeks, but the reality had been more difficult than I'd imagined. Still, beneath the discomfort was something I hadn't felt in years: pride. Self-respect. When I reached my apartment, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my favorite chair by the window. The phone rang almost immediately. Michael, of course. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Text messages followed, ranging from angry accusations to desperate pleas. I turned the ringer off and opened my laptop instead. I had an email from Catherine, checking in after our earlier conversation. I wrote back, confirming that I'd done what we discussed and accepting her invitation to visit Oregon next month. Then I opened a new tab and booked the flight. As night fell, I finally listened to Michael's voicemails. They evolved from incredulous anger to bargaining to a final message that gave me pause. Dad. I don't know what to say. I'm still processing everything. But I think I understand more than you realize. We need to talk, really talk. Not about money. About us. Please call me back. I didn't call that night. Some conversations need the clarity of daylight. Instead, I went to my workbench in the spare bedroom and opened a new model ship kit I'd purchased, a clipper ship this time, more complex than anything I'd attempted before. As I carefully examined the pieces, planning my approach, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The journey ahead, both with this model and with my family, would be challenging. There would be delicate parts to navigate, mistakes to correct, patience required. But I had built bridges my entire life. Physical ones of concrete and steel, and emotional ones between myself and my children after their mother died. This was just another bridge to construct, one that could only be built on a foundation of mutual respect. I picked up the tiny hull of the ship, feeling its weight and potential in my palm. Not worthless, I whispered to myself. Not worthless at all. The morning after my confrontation with Michael and Vanessa, I woke early, a habit from decades of construction deadlines that retirement hadn't erased. The digital clock read 5:17 a.m. Outside, the world was still dark, the quiet broken only by the occasional passing car. I made my coffee strong and black, then sat at my kitchen table with my phone still turned off. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. When emotions run high, silence creates space for reflection. Both for them and for me. At 7:30 a.m. precisely, I powered on my phone. Immediately, notifications flooded the screen: 8 missed calls from Michael, 3 from Vanessa, 17 text messages, and 2 voicemails. I scrolled through the texts first, watching the evolution of their response. The earliest messages were angry: "How dare you ambush us like that, and after everything we've done for you?" Then came bargaining: "Let's talk about this reasonably and we can figure something out that works for everyone." Finally, the last few messages struck a different tone: "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said. And please call. I need to apologize." I listened to the voicemails next. The first was from Vanessa, her voice tight with controlled fury: "Richard, this little power play is beneath you. Call Michael. He's upset." The second was from my son, recorded just after midnight: "Dad, I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about things you said. About respect. About being a resource versus a person. I think I've been wrong for a long time. Please call me." I set the phone down and finished my coffee, watching the sun rise slowly over the apartment complex across the street. The warmth spreading across the horizon mirrored something opening in my chest, not hope exactly, but possibility. At 8 a.m., I called my daughter Catherine. "Morning, Dad," she answered, the sounds of her bustling kitchen in the background. "How did it go?" "About as expected. Shock, anger, bargaining. But Michael left a message that sounds promising." Catherine sighed. "Don't get your hopes up too high. Remember when he realized how much you'd done for them after you paid for the roof repair? That gratitude lasted about 2 weeks. This feels different," I said, though I understood her skepticism. "But either way, I've done what I needed to do. The boundary is set." "Good," Catherine said firmly. "It's about time." How do you feel? I considered this carefully. Lighter. Like I've set down something I've been carrying too long. But also, sad. That it came to this. That's on them, Dad, not you. Anyway, Lily wants to say hi before school. My 12-year-old granddaughter came on the line, chattering excitedly about her science project on renewable energy. I listened, asking questions, genuinely interested in her passion. When she mentioned struggling with the design element, I offered to help. Could you, Grandpa? That would be amazing. Maybe we could video chat this weekend and you could show me how to make the solar panel track with the sun? Absolutely, I promised. Send me the details of what you're working with, and I'll sketch some ideas before our call. After hanging up, I showered and dressed, then headed to my local coffee shop. It had become part of my routine in retirement, a place where I could read the newspaper, exchange pleasantries with other regulars, and feel connected to the world beyond my apartment walls. Martha, the owner, greeted me by name. The usual, Richard? Please, I nodded, settling into my corner table. She brought over my Americano and a blueberry scone I hadn't ordered. I'm the house today. You look like you could use it. I smiled. Is it that obvious? You've got that look, like you're carrying something heavy but also standing a little straighter under it. She wiped her hands on her apron. My ex-husband had the same look when he finally stood up to his mother after 40 years of her running his life. Good for you, whatever it is. I chuckled. Martha had an uncanny ability to read people. Perhaps that's why her coffee shop thrived when so many others had failed. She made everyone feel seen. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Can we meet for lunch? Just us. 1 p.m. at Giovanni's if you're free. Giovanni's, the Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated Michael's college graduation, where I'd comforted him after his divorce from his first wife, where we'd had our last meal as just father and son before he married Vanessa. A place with history. Neutral ground. I texted back simply, I'll be there. The hours until lunch passed slowly. I walked through the park near my apartment, watching young families with their children, elderly couples holding hands, joggers pushing through their morning routines. Life continuing in all its mundane beauty. At 12:45 p.m., I arrived at Giovanni's. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. Mr. Henderson. Wonderful to see you again. Your son called ahead, he's already at your usual table. I nodded my thanks and made my way to the back corner booth where Michael sat fidgeting with his water glass. He looked up as I approached, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. He stood awkwardly, as if unsure whether to shake my hand or hug me. We settled for a nod as I slid into the booth across from him. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice rough. Of course. The waitress appeared, and we ordered spaghetti carbonara for him, eggplant parmesan for me. The same meals we'd ordered for years. Some habits persist even in upheaval. Once she left, Michael took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. I stayed silent, giving him space to continue. I've been thinking about what you said. About using you as a resource rather than treating you as a person. And you're right. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his teenage years that it made my heart clench. When did I start seeing you as an ATM instead of my dad? It was gradual, I said gently. That's how erosion works. So slow you don't notice until suddenly there's a canyon where solid ground used to be. He nodded. After Mom died, you were so focused on taking care of us. Making sure we had everything we needed. Maybe I just got used to it. Expected it. Then when I met Vanessa. She had different expectations for family relationships, I supplied. That's a diplomatic way of putting it. Michael gave a humorless laugh. She comes from a family where money equals love. Where the older generation is expected to provide for the younger one without question. I should have seen how it was affecting our relationship with you. I didn't. Or maybe I didn't want to. Our food arrived, steaming and fragrant. We both took a few bites in silence, the familiar flavors of comfort amid difficult conversation. The thing is, Dad, Michael continued finally, I'm ashamed. Not just about the money, though that's part of it. I'm ashamed that I stood by while Vanessa disrespected you. That I didn't defend you or even acknowledge it was happening. Why didn't you? I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely curious. He set down his fork. Honestly? Fear. Not of Vanessa, exactly, though she can make life difficult when she's unhappy. Fear of what would happen if I acknowledged the problem. Fear that our lifestyle would collapse if we couldn't rely on your help. Fear that I've failed as a provider for my family. I considered this. Have you ever calculated how much you've received from me over the years? He shook his head. No. I never wanted to face the total. $217,432, I said. Not including non-monetary assistance. Michael winced. Jesus. That's more than I thought. It's a lot of money to someone who supposedly can't afford to live without my continued support while maintaining private school tuition and Vanessa's BMW. His face flushed. You make it sound so calculated. Wasn't it? I asked quietly. The timing of your requests always coincided with major expenses. The children's tuition. The roof repair. Vanessa's car. You never asked for help with groceries or utilities, only the big-ticket items that would allow you to maintain a certain lifestyle. Michael stared down at his pasta. When you put it like that. God, we must seem so entitled. The word I'd use is accustomed, I replied. You became accustomed to a standard of living that your income alone couldn't support. Instead of adjusting your expectations, you adjusted your view of me, from father to financier. He looked up, his eyes damp. I'm so sorry, Dad. I really am. For everything, but especially for letting Vanessa treat you that way. For not stopping her when she broke your model ship. For not seeing how much that hurt you. I reached across the table and briefly squeezed his hand, our first physical contact in months. I appreciate that. I really do. But apologies are just words without changed behavior. I know, he nodded. That's why I wanted to meet alone today. I need to figure out where we go from here. What our relationship looks like without the financial component. And... He hesitated. I need to have some difficult conversations with Vanessa. How did she react after I left? Michael grimaced. Not well. She's convinced this is temporary, that you'll come to your senses once you've made your point. When I suggested maybe we should look at our expenses, consider moving the kids to public school, sell her car for something more practical, it didn't go over great. I nodded, unsurprised. And how do you feel about those changes? Terrified, he admitted. But also, relieved? Like maybe we can finally stop pretending we can afford all this. Stop lying to ourselves. Financial honesty is liberating, I said. Even when the truth is uncomfortable. Did you ever struggle like this? After Mom died? I took a sip of water, thinking back to those difficult years. Financially? No. I'd always been careful with money, and your mother's life insurance helped. But emotionally? Absolutely. I questioned every decision. Worried constantly that I was failing you both. Tried to compensate by working harder, providing more. You never showed it, Michael said wonderingly. You always seemed so steady. That was my job as your father. To provide stability when everything else felt uncertain. But perhaps I went too far. Perhaps in trying to be your safety net, I prevented you from developing your own. The waitress cleared our plates and offered dessert. We both declined, settling instead for coffee. I want to fix this, Dad, Michael said earnestly. Not just for the money, though I won't pretend that's not a concern. I want my father back. I want my children to know their grandfather as a person they respect, not just the man who brings gifts and checks. I want that too, I said. But it will take time. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. What can I do? Practically speaking, I considered this carefully. First, accept that my decision about financial support is final. No more loans, no more gifts beyond normal birthday and Christmas presents for the children. Second, establish clear boundaries with Vanessa regarding how I'm treated in your home and in front of my grandchildren. Third, take responsibility for your own financial situation, whatever that entails. Michael nodded, looking both overwhelmed and determined. And what about us? Our relationship? That will heal with time and consistent effort. I suggest we start with regular one-on-one lunches like this. No money talk, just reconnecting. I'd also like to continue my outings with Emma and Jacob, perhaps one Saturday a month. They'd love that, Michael said, then hesitated. Vanessa usually schedules activities on weekends. Then she'll need to adjust, I said firmly. My relationship with my grandchildren is non-negotiable. He nodded again. Understood. He reached for the check, another small but significant gesture. I've got this. As we walked to the parking lot, Michael paused beside my car. There's one more thing. The model ship that Vanessa broke. I saved the pieces. I thought maybe we could try to restore it together. I know it won't be the same, but... I felt something shift in my chest, a tight knot loosening. I'd like that, I said simply. He smiled, relief evident in his face. Thanks, Dad. For today. For giving me a chance to start fixing things. You're my son, Michael. That will never change, even when everything else does. We parted with an awkward but heartfelt hug, the first and longer than I could remember. As I drove home, I felt cautiously optimistic. One conversation wouldn't undo years of unhealthy patterns, but it was a beginning. When I arrived at my apartment, I found a package leaning against my door, a long, slender box with a shipping label from Oregon. Inside was a beautiful piece of hardwood, sanded smooth and polished to a warm glow, with a note from Catherine, for your next ship. Built on a stronger foundation this time. I smiled, running my fingers over the gleaming surface. My daughter always did understand metaphors. That evening, I sat down with my household budget and financial plans. I'd always been careful with money, a habit born from growing up with little, but now I had a new purpose. I was building a legacy, not just a nest egg. I wanted to provide for my grandchildren's education while teaching them the value of hard work. I wanted to help Catherine with her mortgage without enabling dependence. I wanted to leave something meaningful behind when I was gone. Most of all, I wanted to live fully now, with dignity and purpose. I'd spent decades deferring my own dreams to secure my children's futures. Perhaps it was time to reclaim some of those postponed plans. I opened my laptop and searched for woodworking classes in the area. Then I looked at travel packages to the Galapagos Islands, a destination Sarah and I had always talked about visiting someday. Someday had never come for her. But it could still come for me. My phone rang, Catherine again. How did it go with Michael? She asked without preamble. Better than expected. He acknowledged the problem. Apologized. Seems committed to change. She sounded skeptical. And Vanessa? That will be the real test, I admitted. Michael needs to set boundaries with her regarding how I'm treated. Whether he can do that remains to be seen. Well, I'm proud of you regardless, Catherine said. It took courage to do what you did. It shouldn't have, I reflected. That's what bothers me most. Basic self-respect shouldn't require courage within your own family. Unfortunately, sometimes it does, she sighed. Anyway, did you get my package? Yes, thank you. It's beautiful wood. Lily helped pick it out. She's already asking when you're coming to visit. She wants to show you her school's robotics lab. I'm looking forward to it, I said. I've been thinking about staying longer than just a week. Perhaps even looking at apartments near you. Catherine's surprised inhale was audible. Really? You'd consider moving? It's just a thought at this stage, I cautioned. But yes, I'm considering it. There's nothing really keeping me here except habit and proximity to Michael's family. And if those relationships are going to change anyway, well, you know you're always welcome, she said warmly. Lily would be over the moon. And honestly, so would I. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, listening to the sounds of life continuing around me, a neighbor's television, children playing in the courtyard, the distant hum of traffic. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely at peace with my decisions. Not because they were easy, but because they were right. I thought of Vanessa's cutting words, "These little hobbies of yours are worthless, just like your so-called advice and wisdom." Perhaps she'd done me a favor without intending to. Sometimes it takes someone undervaluing you to finally recognize your own worth. I picked up the beautiful hardwood from Catherine and held it up to the light, admiring the grain patterns that told the story of decades of patient growth. Tomorrow, I would call Michael and arrange a time to work on restoring the broken model ship. Not because I needed it back, I was already planning a new, more ambitious project, but because the process of restoration itself held value. Some breaks can be mended. Some relationships can be rebuilt. But the mending always shows. The repairs remain visible, not as flaws but as evidence of care, of effort, of the choice to restore rather than discard. I set the wood down and opened my notebook, beginning to sketch plans for a new model ship. This one would be larger, more intricate, a challenge worthy of my skills and experience. As I drew, I found myself smiling. Vanessa had been wrong about so many things, but perhaps most profoundly about this: there is nothing more valuable than the wisdom that comes from a lifetime of building, breaking, and rebuilding. My worth wasn't determined by her assessment or anyone else's. It was inherent, in my knowledge, in my capacity to love, in my willingness to stand firm when necessary and bend when possible. In my ability to see clearly what needed to change and find the courage to change it. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months, my dreams filled not with broken ships but with open waters and infinite horizons. The sound of my doorbell startled me from deep concentration. I'd been working on preliminary sketches for my new ship model all morning, losing myself in the precise lines and careful measurements that had always brought me comfort. The interruption was unexpected. I rarely received visitors without warning. When I opened the door, I was shocked to find Vanessa standing in the hallway, clutching her designer handbag with white-knuckled fingers. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't quite hide the redness around her eyes or the tightness in her jaw. "Richard," she said stiffly. "May I come in?" I hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. Whatever this conversation would be, it needed to happen. She entered cautiously, her eyes scanning my apartment as if cataloging its contents. I'd never invited her here before, our interactions had always occurred in Michael's home, on her territory. Now she was on mine, and her discomfort was palpable. "Would you like some tea?" I offered, more out of ingrained politeness than genuine hospitality. "No, thank you." She remained standing in the center of my living room, refusing the implicit invitation to sit. "Michael doesn't know I'm here." That was surprising. "I see. He came home from your lunch yesterday and announced we need to make significant lifestyle changes. He mentioned public school for the children, selling my car, possibly even moving to a smaller house." Her voice was controlled but trembling slightly. "He said we need to learn to live within our means without your assistance." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "He also said some things about how I've treated you. About respect and boundaries." She adjusted the strap of her handbag, her only visible sign of nervousness. "I need to know if you're serious about cutting us off financially." "I am," I said simply. "Even if it affects your grandchildren? Their education, their opportunities?" "Emma and Jacob will have plenty of opportunities, Vanessa. Good public schools, loving parents, and grandparents who value them for who they are, not what they achieve or possess." She flinched slightly. "You make it sound like we're shallow materialists who only care about appearances. Aren't you?" The question wasn't cruel, just direct. Vanessa opened her mouth to object, then closed it again. She finally sat down on the edge of my sofa, deflating slightly. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Michael and I had plans. A 5-year strategy for career advancement, property investment, education trusts, but then he got passed over for promotion, the market tanked, and suddenly everything was falling apart. Your support became our safety net. And then your safety net became your foundation, I observed. She nodded reluctantly. I come from a family where appearance matters. Where success is measured by the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the schools your children attend. When things started slipping, I panicked. And I became the solution. An easy one, she admitted. You never asked questions. Never set conditions. Just wrote checks and smiled. I told myself you wanted to help, that it made you feel needed. Did I ever say that? No, she conceded. That was my justification. I moved to my kitchen and filled the kettle, needing something to do with my hands. Would you like that tea now? She nodded, and I busied myself with cups and saucers, the good ones, a wedding gift from Sarah's parents 40 years ago. We'd saved them for special occasions that rarely came. Another lesson learned too late, the folly of saving the best for someday. When I returned with the tea, Vanessa had removed her jacket and looked less formally defensive. She accepted the cup with a quiet thank you. About your model ship, she said suddenly. I didn't break it by accident. I know. I was angry. You'd been telling the children stories about building bridges, about problem-solving and patience. Emma asked why they couldn't be more like you instead of always rushing from one activity to another. She stared into her tea. I felt criticized. Inadequate. When I saw that ship model, something beautiful you'd created with just your hands and time, I wanted to destroy it. Her honesty was unexpected. Why are you telling me this now? Because I owe you the truth, at minimum. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. And because I'm trying to understand why I did it. Why I've been so resentful of you. And have you figured it out? Partially, she admitted. I think I've been jealous. Of the relationship you have with the children, so effortless, so genuine. Of your certainty about who you are and what matters. Of your contentment with a modest life when I've been striving so desperately for more. She set down her cup. And I think I've been afraid. Of what? Of ending up alone. Unwanted. My own parents shipped my grandmother off to a nursing home when I was 12. They visited twice a year, sent checks monthly. They taught me that the elderly are burdens to be managed, not people to be treasured. Her voice cracked slightly. I've been treating you the way I was taught family works. I sat back, absorbing this revelation. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped explain it. What do you want from me now, Vanessa? She straightened her shoulders. I'm not here to ask you to reconsider your financial decision. That would just prove your point about how we see you. I'm here because I need to know if there's still a place for me in your family. If the damage I've done is irreparable. The question hung in the air between us, weighted with years of accumulated resentment and misunderstanding. I took my time answering, wanting my response to be thoughtful rather than reactive. That depends on what happens next, I said finally. One conversation doesn't undo years of disrespect. One apology, which, I notice, you haven't actually offered, doesn't rebuild trust. She nodded, accepting the criticism. You're right. I am sorry, Richard. For the ship, for the dismissive comments, for treating you as a resource rather than a person. I can't promise immediate transformation, but I can promise to try. To be more aware of my behavior and its impact. That's a start, I acknowledged. But Michael and the children are my primary concern. How you and I relate to each other will depend largely on how you support or undermine my relationships with them. Fair enough. She gathered her purse and jacket, preparing to leave. For what it's worth, Michael was right about the changes we need to make. We've been living beyond our means, using your generosity as a crutch. It's time we stood on our own. I walked her to the door, surprised by the civil tone of our conversation. As she stepped into the hallway, she turned back. "One more thing. Catherine called last night." I raised an eyebrow. "She called you?" "She wanted to make sure I understood exactly what was at stake." A small, rueful smile crossed Vanessa's face. "Your daughter is quite formidable when she's protecting her father. She takes after her mother that way." After Vanessa left, I sat in my reading chair by the window, processing the unexpected encounter. Her visit had accomplished something I hadn't anticipated. It had humanized her. For years, I'd seen her as an antagonist, an obstacle between me and my son's family. Now I glimpsed the insecurity behind her polished facade, the learned behaviors she was struggling to recognize and change. It didn't excuse her past actions, but it offered the possibility of a different future. Not immediate reconciliation, but perhaps a gradual rebuilding of mutual respect. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Vanessa told me she visited you. Hope it was civil. Still on for Saturday to work on the model?" I texted back, "Yes to both. Bring the kids if you'd like." His response came quickly, "They'd love that. Emma's been asking about your bridge building stories." I smiled, remembering how attentive Emma had been when I'd explained the principles of structural integrity, using pencils and paper clips to demonstrate load distribution. Her mind was naturally mathematical, curious about how things worked. Perhaps she'd grow up to be an engineer like her grandfather. Or perhaps she'd find her own path entirely. Either way, I wanted to nurture that spark of curiosity in her. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, Jennifer, to finalize the details of the education trusts I'd established for my grandchildren, not just Michael's children, but also Catherine's daughter Lily. I'd structured them carefully, ensuring the funds could only be accessed for legitimate educational expenses, with a small stipend available upon graduation to help with first apartments or career startup costs. "The paperwork looks good, Richard," Jennifer said. "But I'm still concerned about the significant withdrawal you're planning for next month. That's a substantial portion of your liquid assets." "I know," I acknowledged. "But I've done the calculations. Even with those expenditures, I'll have more than enough for a comfortable retirement. And it's time I used some of what I've saved for things that matter to me." "The Galapagos trip and the woodworking studio setup?" "Yes. Plus the down payment on a small condo near Catherine in Oregon, if I decide to make that move." Jennifer sighed. "It's your money, of course. I just want to make sure you're not making emotional decisions you might regret." "On the contrary," I replied, "I think I'm finally making decisions that align with my actual values, not just my fears. For too long, I've hoarded security at the expense of living fully." After hanging up, I turned to my closet and began sorting through decades of accumulated possessions. If I was seriously considering a move to Oregon, I needed to start downsizing. It was remarkable how much stuff one person could acquire over a lifetime: clothes I hadn't worn in years, books I'd never read again, souvenirs from places whose memories had faded. I created 3 piles: keep, donate, and discard. The keep pile was surprisingly small once I honestly assessed what actually mattered to me. The tools my father had given me when I turned 18. The albums of family photos. Sarah's favorite scarf that still held the faintest trace of her perfume. The handmade cards and drawings from my grandchildren. Everything else was just things, useful perhaps, meaningful maybe, but not essential to who I was or what I valued. By mid-afternoon, I had filled 6 donation boxes and twice as many trash bags. My apartment looked emptier but felt more spacious, as if clearing the physical clutter had somehow expanded the psychological room to breathe. I was just breaking for a late lunch when my phone rang. Catherine again. "Dad, I just got the most bizarre email from Vanessa," she said without preamble. "She's asking for advice on how to find Emma a good math tutor because, and I quote, your father noticed her aptitude, and we want to encourage it. What's going on? Did you cast some sort of spell on her?" I laughed. "We had a conversation yesterday. A surprisingly honest one. Well, whatever you said worked. This is the first time she's ever reached out to me without an ulterior motive. She even mentioned possibly visiting Oregon with the kids next summer. People can surprise you, I said. Sometimes it just takes a significant disruption to break established patterns. Like cutting off their financial support? Catherine asked dryly. Like standing up for your own dignity, I corrected gently. Money was just the catalyst, not the core issue. We chatted for a while longer about my potential move to Oregon, Catherine's upcoming teacher conference, and Lily's science project. As we talked, I felt a deep gratitude for this daughter who had always seen me clearly, not as a resource or an obligation, but as a complex human being with strengths, flaws, wisdom, and blind spots. Saturday arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp but sunny, the trees in the park outside my window flaming with red and gold. I spent the morning preparing for Michael and the children's visit, cleaning my already tidy apartment, setting out cookies I'd baked the night before, and clearing my dining table to serve as our workspace for the model ship restoration. They arrived promptly at 1 o'clock, the children bursting through the door with the exuberance only elementary schoolers can muster. Emma immediately spotted my drafting table with the new ship plans. "Are you building another one, Grandpa?" she asked, examining the detailed drawings. "Planning to," I confirmed. "It's a clipper ship, faster and more complex than the last one." Jacob, not to be outdone, proudly held up a small box. "I brought glue for the broken one. Dad said we're going to fix it together." Michael entered last, carrying a larger box that I recognized as the container for my damaged model. He set it carefully on the dining table. "We've got all the pieces," he assured me. "Even the tiny ones." For the next few hours, we worked together sorting, cleaning, and carefully reassembling the broken ship. I showed the children how to identify where each piece belonged, how to apply just the right amount of adhesive, how to hold fragments in place until they set. "It's like solving a puzzle," Emma observed, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration as she fitted a tiny section of railing back into place. "Exactly," I agreed. "But one where you have to be patient and deliberate. Rush, and you'll end up with a mess." Michael caught my eye at that comment, clearly hearing the metaphor that extended beyond our current task. He'd been quieter than usual today, watching the interaction between me and his children with a thoughtful expression. When Jacob and Emma took a break for cookies and milk in the kitchen, Michael finally spoke. "Vanessa told me about her visit. About her apology." "Yes," I confirmed. "It was unexpected but appreciated. She's been different since then. More reflective. Less focused on appearances." He picked up a small section of the model's bow. "We've started making those changes we talked about. Called the public school to arrange a tour. Listed Vanessa's car for sale. She even suggested we cancel our country club membership. That's significant progress. It's not just about the money," Michael continued. "It's about priorities. Recognizing what actually matters." He carefully aligned the bow piece with its connecting section. "Like this ship. It won't be the same after being broken. The repair lines will always show. But that doesn't make it less valuable. Maybe even the opposite." I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his observation. The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The idea is that the breaks and repairs become part of the object's history, something to highlight rather than hide. "That's what we're trying to do," Michael said. "With our family, with our relationship with you. Not pretend the breaks didn't happen, but repair them visibly, honestly." The children returned, and we continued working until the ship began to take recognizable form again. It wasn't perfect, some pieces were too damaged to fully restore, some connections slightly misaligned, but it was whole, in its way. Different, but complete. As they prepared to leave, Michael hung back while the children raced to the car. "Dad, there's something else I wanted to tell you. I've been offered a job. Not a promotion at my current company, a completely different position with a smaller firm." "Oh?" This was unexpected news. "It's less prestigious. Slightly lower base salary. But better work-life balance, more aligned with what I actually enjoy doing rather than what looks impressive on a resume." He shoved his hands in his pockets. I haven't accepted yet. Wanted to think it through carefully. And what does Vanessa say? That's the surprising part. She's supportive. Says maybe it's time I did work I find meaningful instead of just chasing the next title or bonus. He smiled slightly. Your conversation with her really did have an impact. I placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm proud of you, son. For considering what you truly want, not just what you think you should want. That's real maturity. After they left, I stood in my quieter apartment, looking at the partially restored ship on my dining table. It was a tangible representation of what we were all learning, that damage need not be final, that repair is possible, that what emerges from breaking and mending might be different but no less valuable than what came before. That evening, I finalized my reservation for the Galapagos trip, 2 weeks in May exploring the islands that had fascinated me since childhood. Then I opened my laptop and began researching condos in Portland, near Catherine and Lily. Not committing yet, but seriously considering. My phone chimed with an email notification from Jennifer, my financial advisor. The education trusts were officially established. My grandchildren's futures were secure, not excessively funded but protected. They would have support for their education without the expectation of unlimited resources that could stifle their own initiative and self-reliance. As I prepared for bed that night, I caught sight of my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The face looking back at me seemed different somehow, the same lines of age, the same gray hair, but the eyes were clearer, more present. The expression more peaceful. I thought of Vanessa's cutting words that had catalyzed this journey. These little hobbies of yours are worthless, just like your so-called advice and wisdom. How wrong she had been. How wrong I had been to silently accept such dismissal of my worth, my knowledge, my right to respect within my own family. Standing up for myself hadn't been about punishment or revenge. It had been about truth, about authentic relationship, about the genuine love that can only exist between people who see and value each other as they truly are. I turned out the light and settled into bed, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent, of relationships on the mend, of a future opening with new possibilities. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own opportunities for growth. But tonight, I rested in the knowledge that I had rediscovered something essential, my own value, independent of what I could provide or produce for others. And that, I reflected as sleep approached, was worth more than all the financial support I had ever given or withheld. It was the true legacy I hoped to leave my children and grandchildren, not money or property, but the understanding that self-respect is never selfish, that boundaries are forms of love, and that it's never too late to reclaim your worth. 6 months had passed since that fateful Sunday dinner when I'd finally stood up for myself. The morning sun streamed through my new kitchen window, casting golden light across the butcher block countertop as I prepared breakfast. Through the open archway, I could see the partially completed clipper ship model on my dedicated workbench in the corner of the living room, a luxury of space I was still getting used to in my new home. The condo in Portland was smaller than my previous apartment but thoughtfully designed, with large windows overlooking a community garden and enough room for both my woodworking tools and a comfortable seating area for visitors. Most importantly, it was just a 15-minute drive from Catherine and Lily's house. I flipped the omelet in my pan just as my doorbell rang. A quick glance at the clock confirmed it was exactly 9 a.m. Catherine was nothing if not punctual. I turned off the burner and went to welcome my daughter and granddaughter for our weekly Saturday breakfast. "Morning, Dad," Catherine greeted me with a quick hug before heading straight to the coffee maker, another routine we'd established. Lily, now 13 and in the midst of that magical transition from child to young woman, carried a thick folder bursting with papers. "Grandpa, I got an A+ on my renewable energy project." Ms. Wilson said it was the most professionally presented in the class. "That doesn't surprise me one bit," I smiled, accepting both her enthusiastic hug and the folder she thrust into my hands. "Let's see this masterpiece after breakfast." As we settled around the table with our omelets and coffee, hot chocolate for Lily, Catherine updated me on her week at school, the challenges of teaching high school science to students more interested in their phones than in chemical equations. "Oh, before I forget," she said between bites, "Michael called me yesterday." Wanted to know if it was still okay for them to visit during spring break. Of course it is, I replied. I've got the guest bedroom all set up, and the kids can use the air mattresses in the office. Catherine raised an eyebrow. All of them? I thought maybe just Michael and the children. Vanessa's coming too, I confirmed. Actually, it was her idea. Said she wants to see Portland, maybe look at some of the schools here. Schools? Catherine looked surprised. Are they thinking of moving? I shrugged. Michael mentioned his company might be opening a branch office in Seattle. Portland would be a reasonable commute. The transformation in my relationship with Michael and Vanessa had been gradual but significant. After our confrontation and subsequent conversations, they'd made real changes in their lives, downsizing to a smaller house, switching the children to excellent public schools, restructuring their finances to live within their actual means. Michael had accepted the job with the smaller firm and found satisfaction in work that aligned better with his values. Most surprisingly, Vanessa had enrolled in courses to become a certified financial counselor, inspired, she claimed, by the wake-up call of having to manage without my financial support. She now helped other families avoid the same traps of lifestyle inflation and appearance-based spending that had ensnared her own. Our relationship remained a work in progress. There were still occasional tensions, old habits that resurfaced under stress, but the foundation had shifted from transaction to genuine connection. Most importantly, I no longer felt erased or devalued in their presence. After breakfast, Catherine helped me clean up while Lily spread her project materials across the dining table. The professional-looking display board showed diagrams of solar panels, wind turbines, and hydroelectric systems, all illustrated with Lily's precise hand and explained in clear, concise text. See, Grandpa. I used the tracking mechanism you helped me design for the solar panel model. Ms. Wilson said it was ingenious and asked if I had help from an engineer. Lily beamed. I said my grandpa taught me, and that you build bridges all over the country. I smiled, remembering the video calls we'd had while working on her project, how engaged she'd been with the principles of energy conversion and mechanical design. Catherine had always said Lily took after me, the same methodical mind, the same fascination with how things worked. Speaking of engineers, Catherine said, did you tell Lily your news? I hesitated. I was waiting for the right moment. What news? Lily looked up from her project, immediately alert. Well, I began, you know how I've been volunteering at that after-school STEM program at your mother's school? Lily nodded. The one where you help kids build bridges out of popsicle sticks and learn about structural engineering. The very same. They've asked me to develop it into a full curriculum for middle schools across the district. Paid position, 3 days a week, starting next fall. Grandpa. Lily's eyes widened. That's amazing. You're going to be a teacher like Mom. More of a curriculum designer and guest instructor, I clarified. But yes, it's an opportunity to share what I know with young people who might become the next generation of engineers and builders. Catherine squeezed my shoulder. I'm so proud of you, Dad. Taking on a new challenge at 70. 69, I corrected with mock seriousness. I'm not 70 for another 3 months. We laughed, and I felt a surge of gratitude for this new chapter of my life, one that had seemed impossible just a year ago when I was trapped in patterns of obligation and resentment. Later that afternoon, after Catherine and Lily had left, I received a video call from Emma and Jacob. These weekly calls had become another cherished routine, a chance to stay connected despite the geographic distance. Grandpa, they chorused as their faces appeared on my tablet screen. At 9 and 6, they seemed to grow inches between each call. We finished the volcano project. Emma announced, holding up a papier-mâché creation painted in realistic browns and grays. Dad helped with the baking soda reaction part. Excellent craftsmanship, I praised. Did you remember to create a proper channel for the lava to flow through? Just like you showed us. Jacob confirmed. And guess what? Dad says we're going to stay in your house for spring break. That's right, I smiled. I'm looking forward to showing you Portland. There's an excellent science museum I think you'll both enjoy." We chatted about their school projects, their friends, and the stray cat they'd been feeding in their backyard. Their enthusiasm hadn't changed, but I noticed a difference in how they engaged with me now, asking questions about my projects too, showing genuine interest rather than just reporting their own activities. Michael appeared briefly at the end of the call. "Hey, Dad. Sorry I can't talk long, taking the kids to soccer in 15 minutes. Just wanted to confirm our flights for spring break. We arrive on the 12th, around noon. I'll be there to pick you up, I promised. Looking forward to it." "Me too," he said, and I could tell he meant it. After the call ended, I returned to my workbench and the clipper ship model. As I carefully shaped a tiny piece of wood for the bowsprit, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The Galapagos trip had been everything I'd hoped for: 2 weeks of wonder exploring volcanic landscapes and observing the remarkable wildlife that had inspired Darwin's theory of evolution. I'd traveled with a small tour group of like-minded seniors, making several new friends with whom I still corresponded. Upon returning, I'd finalized the purchase of the Portland condo and made the move west, arriving just in time to help Lily prepare for her science fair and Catherine paint her living room, the kind of ordinary family moments I'd missed for too long. The education trusts for all 3 grandchildren were established and growing steadily. They would provide support without creating dependence, enough to open doors without removing the motivation to work hard and develop self-reliance. Most significantly, I'd reclaimed my sense of purpose. The STEM curriculum project was invigorating, allowing me to translate decades of practical engineering experience into lessons that might inspire young minds. I'd also joined a local woodworking club, where I both learned new techniques and shared my own knowledge with fellow enthusiasts. My phone buzzed with a text from Martha, the coffee shop owner from my old neighborhood who had, to my surprise, maintained our friendship through regular calls and messages after my move. The storm missed us entirely. "Still planning to visit next month? Guest room is ready whenever you are." I smiled as I texted back a confirmation. Martha and I had developed a comfortable companionship over the past months, nothing romantic yet, but a warm friendship with potential for more. We discovered shared interests in history, architecture, and classic films, along with compatible perspectives on money, family, and the value of independence in our senior years. The next morning, I awoke to an email notification from my bank. A substantial deposit had been made to my account. Puzzled, I logged in to investigate and found a transfer from Michael with a brief memo: "First repayment. Thank you for everything." I stared at the screen, momentarily confused. Then understanding dawned. After our reconciliation, Michael had asked for a complete accounting of everything I'd given them over the years. Not with the intention of repayment, I'd been clear that those were gifts, not loans, but to fully comprehend the extent of their dependence. He'd never mentioned repayment, and I'd never expected it. Yet here it was, not the full amount, but a significant first installment. I picked up my phone and called him directly, something I rarely did early on a Sunday morning. "Dad?" He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding concerned. "Is everything okay?" "I just saw the deposit," I said without preamble. "Michael, I told you that money was a gift. You don't need to repay it." There was a pause, then Michael spoke quietly. "I know I don't need to. I want to. Not all at once, but over time." Another pause. "It's not about the money, Dad. It's about accountability. About acknowledging what happened and taking responsibility for my part in it." I sat down, moved by his words. "I appreciate the gesture, son. But please don't strain your finances to do this." "We're not," he assured me. "Actually, Vanessa's financial counseling practice is doing quite well. Turns out there are a lot of people in our old social circle living beyond their means who need exactly the kind of help she can provide, someone who's been there and found a better way." After we hung up, I sat in my morning quiet, watching the sunlight strengthen across my living room floor. Michael's gesture represented something more valuable than money. It signified his genuine understanding of our past dynamic and his commitment to establishing a healthier relationship going forward. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reflections. I wasn't expecting visitors, but when I opened the door, I found Lily standing there, slightly out of breath. Mom said I could ride my bike over if I was careful, she explained. I forgot to show you my recommendation letter from Ms. Wilson yesterday. She says I should apply for the summer engineering program at Portland State. I welcomed her in, offering hot chocolate and my full attention as she excitedly outlined her plans for the summer program application. Her enthusiasm reminded me so much of Catherine at that age, curious, determined, unafraid of challenges. You know, Lily said thoughtfully, stirring her hot chocolate, Mom told me what happened with Uncle Michael and Aunt Vanessa. How they weren't very nice to you. I raised my eyebrows, surprised that Catherine had shared that story. She didn't tell me all the details, Lily clarified, reading my expression. Just that they treated you like you were only valuable for what you could give them, not for who you are. And that you finally stood up for yourself. That's a fair summary, I acknowledged. I'm glad you did, she said firmly. And I'm really glad you moved here. Not just because you helped me with my projects, but because... She hesitated, suddenly shy. Because you're my grandpa, and I like spending time with you. Her simple honesty touched me deeply. I like spending time with you too, Lily. Very much. After she left, I returned to my clipper ship model, working with renewed focus. The project was coming along beautifully, more intricate and ambitious than anything I'd attempted before. Unlike the first ship that Vanessa had broken, this one wasn't being built to impress anyone or prove my worth. It was purely for the joy of creation, for the satisfaction of applying skills developed over a lifetime. As evening approached, I prepared a simple dinner and then settled in my favorite armchair with a book on architectural history I'd been meaning to read for months. My phone rang, Catherine again. Dad, sorry to bother you on a Sunday evening, but I have a parent-teacher conference tomorrow that got scheduled last minute. Any chance you could pick Lily up from school? Her robotics club ends at 4:30. Of course, I said without hesitation. I'll be there. Thanks, Dad. You're a lifesaver. After we hung up, I marveled at how different this request felt from the ones Michael and Vanessa used to make. Catherine asked rarely, appreciated genuinely, and never took my assistance for granted. The help I provided came from love, not obligation, and was received with gratitude rather than entitlement. That night, I dreamed of bridges, not the concrete and steel structures I'd designed throughout my career, but metaphorical spans connecting islands of experience. In the dream, I was building a bridge with my grandchildren, teaching them how to secure each plank, how to test for stability, how to create something that would endure beyond our own crossings. I woke feeling rested and purposeful, ready for another day in this new life I'd crafted for myself, a life defined not by what I gave to others, but by mutual respect and genuine connection. The following weekend, I hosted a small gathering to celebrate the completion of my clipper ship model. Catherine and Lily came, of course, along with Martha who'd driven up from my old neighborhood, 2 friends from my woodworking club, and my neighbor Mrs. Chen who had become a regular chess opponent. As we enjoyed coffee and the apple pie Martha had brought, my guests admired the intricate details of the finished ship, the tiny hand-stitched sails, the meticulously crafted railings, the precisely scaled masts and rigging. It's absolutely beautiful, Martha said, leaning close to examine the miniature wooden planks of the deck. How long did it take you to complete it? Just over 5 months, I replied. But I've been planning it for much longer. It reminds me of that Japanese concept you told me about, Catherine remarked. The one about repairing broken things with gold. Kintsugi, I nodded. Though this ship isn't repaired, it's entirely new. Built from scratch with everything I've learned. That makes it even more special, Lily declared. It's like your experience made into something real. Her insight, so perceptive for a 13-year-old, made me smile. That's exactly right, Lily. Every ship I build incorporates lessons from previous projects, what worked, what didn't, what could be improved. Like life, Martha observed quietly. Precisely like life, I agreed, meeting her thoughtful gaze. Later, after my guests had departed and I was washing the last of the coffee cups, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Dad, got a minute? I need your advice on something important." Once, those words would have been the prelude to a financial request. Now, they signaled genuine desire for guidance. "Of course," I replied, drying my hands and sitting down. "What's on your mind?" "I've been offered a position with the Portland branch," he said. "Better title, slightly better pay, but most importantly, a chance for a fresh start in a new city. Vanessa's on board, says she can establish her counseling practice anywhere. The kids are excited about being closer to their cousins." "That sounds promising," I said cautiously. "What advice do you need?" "Two things, actually. First, practical matters. We'd want to find a house in a good school district, ideally not too far from you and Catherine. Any recommendations on neighborhoods to consider?" I suggested several areas with strong public schools and reasonable commutes to downtown Portland. "And the second thing?" I prompted when he hesitated. "This is harder," Michael admitted. "I need your honest opinion. Do you think we're ready for this? Moving closer to you, becoming more involved in each other's daily lives? Have we earned back that level of trust?" The question revealed how far he'd come. The Michael of a year ago would never have considered that trust needed to be earned rather than assumed. "I think," I said carefully, "that you've demonstrated real change. Not perfect, not complete, but genuine. And I believe continued proximity might actually strengthen our new boundaries rather than threatening them." "That's what I was hoping you'd say," Michael replied, the relief evident in his voice. "We'll start looking at houses next month when we visit." After we hung up, I walked to my balcony and looked out at the community garden below, where a group of children were helping an elderly man plant spring bulbs. The scene captured something essential about community, about the natural flow of knowledge and care between generations. I thought about Vanessa's cutting words that had started this journey. "These little hobbies of yours are worthless, just like your so-called advice and wisdom." How wrong she had been. My hobbies had brought me joy, creative satisfaction, and connections with like-minded people. My advice, when actually sought rather than imposed, had value. My wisdom, earned through decades of living, building, failing, and succeeding, was a resource I could now share freely, not because I was obligated, but because I chose to. Standing up to my daughter-in-law's dismissal hadn't just been about asserting my worth to her, it had been about recognizing it myself. About refusing to accept a role that diminished me to a mere utility. About reclaiming the fullness of my humanity in my family relationships. The results had transformed not just how others treated me, but how I viewed myself. I was no longer the silent supporter in the background, the reliable resource taken for granted. I was Richard Henderson, father, grandfather, engineer, craftsman, teacher, friend. Complicated, valuable, worthy of respect. As twilight settled over Portland, I returned to my workbench and began sketching plans for my next project, a model of the Brooklyn Bridge, one of the engineering marvels that had inspired my career choice as a young man. This one would be larger, designed to be displayed in the middle school where I would soon be teaching my engineering curriculum. I smiled at the symmetry of it, ending my career by inspiring the next generation, just as I had once been inspired. Life had come full circle, but the circle had expanded, encompassing new relationships, new purposes, new joys. Vanessa's attempt to diminish me had backfired spectacularly. In calling me worthless, she had inadvertently set in motion the very journey that would help me rediscover just how much I was worth, to myself and to those who truly valued me for who I was, not merely for what I could provide. The lessons were clear now, etched into my consciousness like the careful measurements on my drafting paper. True worth isn't determined by others' assessments. Genuine relationships require mutual respect, not just mutual benefit. Standing up for your dignity isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic connection. And it's never too late to reclaim your value, to rebuild relationships on healthier foundations, to chart a new course toward fulfillment. As night fell and I prepared for bed, I felt a deep contentment, not the passive resignation I'd mistaken for peace in my previous life, but an active, engaged satisfaction with the path I'd chosen and the boundaries I'd established. Tomorrow would bring its challenges and joys, picking up Lily from school, working on my curriculum project, perhaps a chess game with Mrs. Chen. Simple pleasures, meaningful work, valued connections. A life rebuilt with intention, crafted with care, worthy of the time invested in its creation. Like my clipper ship model, now displayed proudly in my living room window where the morning sun would catch its sails, turning them to gold. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.